So now we're going to discuss some specific instructional approaches that you can use when teaching an individual to use their AAC device, whether it be a picture board, a high-tech device, or PECs, or any other sort of picture symbols. So the first technique is called explicit instruction and incidental teaching. And for those of you who have some experience with your BCBA and more of that highly structured behavioralist type of intervention will do well with this. So you have multiple trials with a stimulus, a prompt, and then a response by the learner, either correct or not correct, which is then rewarded, and then you just continue this over and over. So an example would be if you were working with a kid and you were playing with a baby doll and you wanted them to label the baby doll's body parts, you would say, "What am I pointing to on the baby?" And then that's the prompt. The stimulus is what am I pointing to? That's your question, and you want the student to say nose. So the prompt would be tell me on your device, and then the child would either hit the correct response with nose, and you would say, "Great job, that's right, this is her nose." Or if they don't put nose, you always want to show the correct model. You don't just tell them, "Nope, that's not right." You say, "Oh, let's try again. I'm pointing to her nose. Here's her nose," and then do hand over hand to get the correct response. And then you just repeat that over and over. So it's very much a behavioralist approach, and it tends to work pretty well. Conversational coaching is another strategy that you can use. This works really well if you have two AAC users, but can also work well with just one. So basically you, the SLP, are going to be working as a facilitator, and you're going to be providing prompts to the individuals who are using the AAC device when they are using conversational skills. So you're going to have one person ask a question. You're either going to use a gesture, you're going to point to a question on their device, do a physical, a hand over hand, and indirect verbal, like, "Well, maybe you could ask your friend a question here," or direct verbal prompts such as "push this button," to teach right in the moment as the conversation is happening. So your client will ask a question, the other person will reply in some way and hopefully ask a question back, and then you're going to coach your client how to respond to that question and then ask another one and move on. So it's literally just coaching them through a conversation and teaching those skills of eye contact, responding to other people, asking partner-directed questions right back at them. That's a fun one to do, and like I said, it works really well if you have more than one AAC user, and you can get a little social skills group going. It tends to be very fun. Strategy instruction is another really commonly used instructional approach in AAC. Your book goes into it in detail on page 272, and you can look through it more there, but I'll explain it a little bit. It's an 8-step process. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to define the specific goal that you're trying to teach. So if your goal is that you want your child to learn how to request to open something, that's going to be your target skill. You're going to explain this skill to the child and why it's an important thing to do. You're going to say, today we're going to work on learning how to ask people to open a box or open a door for you. This is important because when you ask people to open things, it helps you see what's inside and get more places and learn new things. You're going to demonstrate how to use this skill, or have someone else, or model it for them, or have somebody else model it. So you're going to point on the device. You're going to use the device yourself. You're going to say, "I want to know what's in that bag, so I'm going to say, 'Please open,' and you're going to push those buttons, 'Please open,' and push them as you're saying it, as you're explaining it. Or you can have somebody else model it for you. You can ask the child to think of a situation when they might need to use this skill. Obviously, that's not always going to be appropriate. Sometimes a child might cognitively be able to do that, other times not so much. You're going to set up situations for the person to use this skill. You can do this either during, like, in natural, real, in-the-moment situations, or you can do some role-playing type situations in your therapy setting. You're going to provide guided practice for the person to use the target skill, again, with role-playing or in natural context. So targeted practice means they're going to be practicing it, and if they get it wrong, then you're going to show them the right way to do it. If they don't hit the right buttons, then it's really important to not just say, nope, let's try again and move on, but show them the right way to do it. You're going to evaluate the progress regularly to measure the effects of the instruction and how well it's working, and then you're going to conduct probes in novel settings with novel partners to make sure that they're generalizing the skill. That strategy instruction is pretty intuitive, and it's something that we tend to do pretty naturally in speech-language pathology for a lot of other areas as well, and it also carries over to AAC. We also have some specific language modeling techniques. These are when the facilitator is going to be highlighting symbols on the user's communication device as he or she interacts verbally with the user. So think about if you have a young child who is verbal and is learning language naturally. How do we teach young kids language? We model it for them. We say it and then they repeat it and we get all excited, and then they learn that that was a good thing to do and they continue to do it over and over. So young children learn language through modeling, and the same thing is true for children using AAC device. They're not going to be able to learn this whole different language on their device or on their picture board or with their picture symbols, whatever they're using, unless you model it for them. So it's really important. I think that these strategies are extremely helpful. You want to be providing speech and symbol input because, like we discussed earlier, these kids are learning two different languages, the receptive language of English and then also their expressive language, which is through their symbols. So you need to pair them both together so they get the receptive and the expressive component to it. The first strategy is called aided language stimulation, and this one is the most rigid of the three, and this is when you are going to be pointing to the symbols on the screen, and you're also going to be either shining a light like a red laser pointer, or making a clicking sound in the palm of your hand when you touch the button, or some sort of feedback to really grab your individual's attention that this is what they need to be looking at and doing. So if you're trying to teach them to open the door or request to open a bag or whatever, you're going to say, okay, we're going to practice. We're going to say open the door, and then when you say open, you're going to point to the picture symbol for open and make a clicking noise, and then when you say door, the same thing, point to it and do the clicking noise, open door, click, click, along with it. Like I said, you can also use a light, or you can use some sort of pointer, just anything that's going to draw extra attention to the symbols that you're pointing to. The system for augmenting language is very similar to aided language stimulation. You don't necessarily need to use the light or the noise associated with it, though. It's not as rigid and not as formal, I guess. So you would do the same thing. We're going to practice. We're going to say open door, please, and be pointing to those 3 words or 2 words, whatever your target is, every time that you say it. So you're matching it again with the speech and the symbol. You're providing both of those inputs for the individual. Aided language modeling is really good for really young children or children who you are not sure have communicative intent yet. And this is when you're going to be, or children who don't yet have picture-object representation. This is when you're going to be pointing to the real object and the symbol on the device. So if you're playing with a farm set, and so you have the picture symbols of the animals up, you're going to say, look, let's play with the cow. This is a cow. A cow says moo. And while you're holding the actual object of the cow, you're going to be pointing to the cow button or the cow picture on their AAC device or board or whatever it is that you're using. So you're pairing the real object with the picture, and that's going to teach them where the vocabulary is in their AAC world and also give them something to relate it to in the real world. So like I said, that's good for kids who are really young, kids who don't have picture-object representation yet, and kids who you're not sure if they have communicative intent yet. All 3 of those strategies are ones that I use fairly often, and they work really well, and it's amazing how quickly individuals will pick up on the vocabulary and where it's at, and they'll learn it as they go. So it's definitely a lot of fun to do. The last one is a strategy that has quite a bit of research behind it. It's called LAMP, Language Acquisition Through Motor Planning, and there's actually an entire website devoted to the LAMP procedure. And LAMP is typically used with PRC high-tech devices, and you will be hearing from the PRC representative in our 2-week on-campus time in July, and I'm sure that they'll talk about LAMP a little bit. But I really like LAMP, and I think that the principles behind it can be generalized to other devices, even lower tech and mid-tech things. And this is when you're teaching about vocabulary placement and how to find things through motor planning. So the individual is going to learn the motor plan for you push this button first, then this button, and it's in the same place all the time. And when you push those 3 buttons, it means I want cookies and you get cookies. This tends to work really well for children who have autism, so they're not necessarily super motivated by the communicative piece, but they're motivated by the result, and that they tend to have more strengths in the visual and the motor planning part of their brain, and so they just tend to do well with being taught explicitly the motor plan of this button equals this type of thing. Like I said, there's an entire website. If you just Google LAMP, you'll find it, where it explains it in more detail and whatnot. There's also a app now that you can use that's a LAMP AAC app, which is also a really good one to use. So those are a few of the instructional approaches that you can use when you are supporting emerging communicators with their AAC systems. This is the end of this PowerPoint. If you have any questions or concerns or anything isn't clear, please feel free to shoot me an email and I will do my best to clear it up for you. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon. Bye.